Hi, guys, and welcome to a new episode of our podcast. I'm here with Elon, and of course, I'm John. And this week, I wanted to talk about something that initially actually made me want to start this podcast, and that was the subject of incels. And I heard one of my friends who has a podcast talking about it with her friend, and I felt that uh, that there was some misunderstanding in terms um, of I felt that they didn't really understand the situation, and I thought, wouldn't it be awesome to have like our own platform where everybody could talk about this? And I talked to Elan, and that's how all of this actually started. And then it was on the radio yesterday, and I decided that we should do the episode. So, Elan, when I came to you with this, you wanted to tie it into um, labeling and gender identity as well. And can you just talk about
Yeah,
why you?
yes. So my thought with this was you mentioned labeling, and I know that the inception of this idea for you was incels and kind of how they're perceived, right? And how incel is a label, and uh, I know we'll get into it that you may feel it might be a little bit misunderstood, but for me, when I think of labeling, I see a label as meaning you're part of some kind of group, right? And that means that it relates directly to your identity. And so when I think labeling, I immediately thought of uh, gender pronouns, which are becoming more of a hot topic these days, and with more awareness about trans identity and LGBTQ identity. Um, it's become more of a topic that people are talking about nowadays, and so I immediately thought of that and thinking of identity and okay, how we look at ourselves and versus how other people look at us. So that's kind of where that took me, but we're just going to start this conversation off talking about incels and we see what kind of identity uh, topic we can get into.
Sure.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so like I said, I stumbled across this conversation. I had never really read much about incels, but found it kind of interesting, um, and went and did a bit of a just a YouTube search to see what else I could find after listening to that podcast rather. And one of well I'd like yeah I'd come across it, but so one of the things that I came across was this video. It was like an ask me anything interview with an incel, with a self-professed incel. And now there's absolute hate for the incel community, and on face value it is all justified because some of the stuff that they say is just abhorrent.
And
um,
do like
and
kill
do
people.
very importantly do, yeah. um, So, well, okay. So the way I'd see it is that a very small number of them are doing stuff, and a
Yes.
relatively large number of them are saying stuff. So that's kind of why I
Right,
focus
right,
on
right, right.
saying. Um, so this guy that the have you had a chance to watch the video?
Yes, I have actually.
Yeah. So uh, he starts off saying like pretty um, horrible stuff. Like, he says a couple of,
Aggressive.
yeah, really, like women should be put in their place and all of that kind of stuff. And then as he develops his conversation with multiple interviewers, there's about 5 or 6 interviewers that were just brought in off the street. Um, and I'll try to make sure that that's in the description below. Um, he softens all of his hardline values, you know, and he does come to the conclude, like, eventually what he's turning around and saying is that he just wants somebody who loves him, like. And I think that's really characteristic of a lot of these people, is that they're hurt, and like, okay, yes,
Lonely, I
they're
would say, is the primary.
lonely for one, but I think like lonely is is not something on its own that like there might be a degree of um, militarization of their psyches, you know, that somebody has been teaching them.
But that's the, to me, that's the emotional component of it, right? So you take the feelings that you're feeling of loneliness, maybe untreated mental illness, right? Depression, anxiety, could be anything.
Mhm.
You take the emotional connection that you have of feeling alone. Plus, this is where identity kind of ties into it, how you think other people see you, right? How you see yourself, the experiences you've had in your life. He talks about just the the amount of rejection that he's had in his life, the incel,
Yeah,
and that being kind of the formative experience which has pushed him to become an incel. And I think that's where it comes. That's where the militarization of the idea, or the radicalization, or whatever you want to believe it. That's where it comes from, because to me, radical ideology is fueled by emotion, right? Um, it's, to me, it's kind of like an emotional connection to a worldview due to your past experiences, and you just kind of get pushed further and further along as you emotionally connect with the ideology. So to me,
yeah,
that's what's happening there, and um, I found that part of the discussion, the last part, to be very eye-opening, in that he really talks about, yeah, it is loneliness, right? It's people who think that society doesn't have any use for them. They've never been seen as valuable or worthy in their lives, and so they formed their own community of people online to connect with, right?
yeah.
And that's kind of, I think, the genesis of this, right?
Yeah, what's interesting about it as well is that so you know the way people get behind their football clubs and form these kind of hooligan gangs and stuff like that, um, and like uh, one of the big arguments that's thrown out there is like, what does this have to do with football? Um, and actually, the answer is nothing. What that is about is a sense of belonging and community, and
Yep.
everybody craves
Absolutely.
that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm saying subgroups, because it's a group of people, to someone who's been lonely and rejected their whole life, being a part of a group is very empowering.
Yeah. And like if I was an artist and somebody asked me to draw an incel, I would have drawn that guy
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
he's got like long greasy hair. He's fairly overweight. He like he's spotty geek that probably couldn't look you in the eye if
Well,
you know
yeah.
there's a lot of things there that like you would typically go, yeah, okay, I could see how you would start off with a little bit of trouble getting like women, especially in your teenage years when it's so superficial,
Yeah.
and then sorry, what's like, and then as you move into adulthood when it's not as important, now your personality is a problem, um, and I think that
So,
really, like
yeah.
I'm sure he would be doing fine if he had a healthier mental attitude. It's just that now he doesn't realize that now the mental aspect is what's blocking him.
I mean, and for me too, like when I saw the video, I was like, okay, obviously not like conventionally attractive guy, but also not like, not hideous. Like
He's not
he would,
Quasimodo.
not
Like,
at all. No, he would be fine, I think.
yeah,
It's
and he,
just like you said, he's also quite young, which is the thing. He looks like he's
yeah.
about 15 or 16,
Oh no, I'd say
which,
he's older than that. I'd say he's about
you think
21
so?
or something. Yeah,
Okay, well, it's still,
yeah.
still in
It's still
that,
quite young.
still
Yeah,
in those years where, yeah, that
the
would,
really hard years when it
the
comes to
really
girls.
hard years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah. So that's the other thing, is that it's where you've grown up in, it's growing up online, and that's the other thing about living in growing up, I guess, in today's society is, you have the personal validation that you get in person, and then you have the online validation that you get, right? And you have people who are getting it from all sides. You have people who are getting it from one side or the other. And you have people who are watching other people get it from both sides who are not getting any of it. And I think that makes it even harder.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So in terms of, like, we've touched on, you know, the aspects that creates these people and stuff like that. But really, the reason why this was something that interested me so much and bothered me so much actually is not because of anything he said. Like, you know, for when I watched that, and when I've like looked at other stuff in relation to this online, like a lot of what I've seen are like these guys are, um, some of them are like, for want of a better word, a little bit pathetic, but 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 by no means fucking domestic terrorists. Like, they're like, a lot of them are being made out to be. Like, I don't know what the breakdown is. Like, maybe it's as much as 10%. I would say that it's probably a lot lower than that. And like 90+% of all of these guys are just in need of a bit of, like, you know, if he got a girlfriend tomorrow, he'd
Oh, that
drop.
is,
That's it, over
yeah,
for him. Like,
yeah.
you know, he's going to drop all of that kind of sentiment, and he's going to like, he's going to be kind of reformed, or whatever you want to call it, very quickly.
Well,
Uh,
he seems to be, if I might say something, uh, he seems to be a little bit of an exception, in that he does have regressive attitudes towards women,
for
but
sure he does. Yeah.
it hasn't really calcified into that heavy bitterness or hatred, which I think
Yeah.
drives some incels, and drives definitely the ones who are driven to violence.
So let's focus on that for a second. Is that
Sure.
a personality thing, or or is that a time thing, that like over the course, like if you were an incel for 5-6 years, is that going to be enough to turn all these guys? Or because then we should be nipping it in the bud, right? We should be doing something proactively in
Right.
school or something to.
Well, is it, yeah. So why is it so popular? Why has it become a thing recently? And
The
that's why,
internet, I would say. Like,
yeah,
it's just.
right, right. So similar, like-minded guys connecting who maybe don't live in the same place or whatever, right? Um, and it's interesting because, to me, incels are not dangerous because of the the regressive attitude towards women is definitely, a huge problem, and a reason not to listen to what an incel is saying. But the reason why it's potentially dangerous is that it's driven by grievance. And to me, any kind of identity that's driven by grievance is potentially explosive, right? You look at white supremacy, you look at anti-LGBTQ, right? Grievance, this idea of you deserve something, or the world is fucked up, or the world is not getting you what you want, right? And or the world is giving everything to these people and nothing to your people. That to me is really dangerous, because it marries that emotional kind of feelings, right? Like the sadness, the anger, the loneliness. And all it takes is someone who couples those feelings with, like, with a mental illness, or with something that untethers them to reality, or extreme indoctrination, can
Yeah,
make that violent, right? All It's not that many steps from I hate women to let me hurt women.
of
It's not that
course.
many steps,
And like, you
you
know,
know?
if you want to draw a comparison that's probably better studied, like radical religious beliefs is kind of along the same lines. Um, it starts off with, we'll give you a little bit of community that you've been lacking, and then it's like, you need to give us something in return, and that something in return will start off small and build, like, you know, it's. But like, they do, the two of them have, and even not religious stuff, like nationalistic stuff and all of that kind of stuff,
Right.
um, all that side of things. All of them, anything that is taking a section of community and going, they're the reason for your problem, regardless of how big or small that section of community is. Obviously, like, women aren't really a minority, they're 50% of the population, but but anything that you're kind of going, this group is the reason for your bad luck, it's always going
The
to
scapegoat.
end in disaster.
Yes. Yeah.
Always.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what I was trying to kind of nudge my way into before about why is this a thing recently is that loneliness is not a new thing among kids growing up. I would say, especially that kind of boy growing up, right? Who, like the guy in the video, clearly doesn't really take care of himself very much. Like, you know, there's especially growing up where you're really into video games or you're really into like movies, stories, TV, whatever. Um, less with your connections with other people and your social obligations, I guess, are less. You kind of are a little bit more tethered to this world of fantasy than this world of reality. And if it's mixed with the lack of validation or something that you're getting from the outside, it can I feel like it can kind of brew into this regressive attitude of women are the problem, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I feel like is so bad about this, because yeah, these communities, probably not communities, these people have existed for a long time, and we see them as adults now or throughout history, like the lonely whatever has become this and done that. And it's only really now with the internet and the amplification of each other's voices that I feel like it's become toxic, like
Um, yeah, well, I'd say there's probably one more element. Like, this is certainly true of racism, but I don't know if, like, I feel like it is probably true of like incel movement and stuff like that as well. But so where it always existed, and there was always some method for organizing it. Um, First of all, the ability to organize was limited to a somewhat local level. And second of all, the ability for somebody to take advantage of the situation, like somebody who's not even racist, like they just want anarchy,
yep, or power. Yeah.
or power, power through anarchy, most likely. But
Well, yeah, but I
um,
mean, yeah, that's an authoritarian thing.
yeah,
Pick on people's fears to get them to support you.
yeah,
Tale as
uh,
old as time.
yeah, of course, yeah. So that, like, that side of things has become a lot more like, even though these problems, we just swept them under the carpet for centuries. I've no doubt they existed for
Right,
centuries.
right,
But
right.
uh,
Yeah, and to me, like you can hold two ideas to be true, and I view that the same way. And when I was watching the video, this is what I thought. Like, yes, he makes some decent points about the way that we kind of flock to the shiny object. He does make a good point about how, we flock to the shiny object. We kind of let boys grow up without connection. We let boys grow up without um, validation a lot of the times. We let boys grow up um, lonely in a sense. And we stigmatize the outsider, we stigmatize the loser, we stigmatize the person who's different, right? And we probably don't push, we probably don't have a robust enough system of mental health facilities and mental health services to offer these young men. And they probably are, they don't think about, they don't think that that could be the problem for them, right? So that's not even an option for a lot of people. So
but I don't think
that
people
is,
want to. I don't think people want to help them. They want to, like, this is kind of the
well, I'm
original
not
point.
talking about incels. I'm just talking about like that
Oh, sorry, right, okay.
let the group of lonely whatever unappreciated
Mhm.
boys
Right.
who just grow up lonely, right? And that's true. And you know that I can see the merit in that. True. At the same time, misogyny plays a real role in so many people's lives. Women are denied opportunities and denied chances because of their gender. Women are treated poorly, and uh, just the other day I watched the video of a woman being catcalled. She like put like a 3-minute video of just her walking around New York City being catcalled for hours and hours and hours and hours. People walking up next to her, just constant, constant, constant. And the kind of regressive viewpoints that he's talking about in his the incel is talking about is also hugely problematic. And you can't, like, yes, what he was saying about the mental health and loneliness aspect is true, but also what he was saying about his regressive attitudes towards women and general misogyny towards women is, I would say, probably way more problematic at this stage.
Yeah. Um, it is for sure. Like whatever difficulties he's having meeting women, um, the balance has swung to his personality. Like
Yes.
or not his personality, but his mental attitude. Um,
Yeah. And
so
yeah, and also this idea of like being owed something, right? And it kind of takes away the responsibility from yourself, which is the most ridiculous thing about it, right? Like he
in
says,
fairness to
"Oh
him,
yeah,
he had taken some measures. He had lost 100 pounds and stuff like that.
right, right.
But
All
he was
yeah,
taking some.
that yeah, yeah. Taking measures is one thing, but then but that's not enough. You know what I mean? Like, you know, meeting someone in general, it needs to be a person who's attracted to you, who's into your personality, right time, right place. Like there's more that goes into it than, oh, no one will ever love me, Like that might be how it feels sometimes, but it's not that. And so by saying, oh, I'm an involuntary celibate, everyone just hates on me. Like that's why I can't find somebody. That's why, like that's
Yeah,
why I am this way. It takes the responsibility off of you to me. And like probably the biggest irony is that incels are probably the people who would benefit the most from being friends with women, from listening to women, from
yeah.
understanding women.
I
Like
really think that as well. Yeah,
that's and the irony is that they're sequestering themselves off into this online group of angry guys when the thing that will solve your problem is talking to a woman, being friends with a woman, listening to a woman. Because what they're doing now is they're placing women into this box of an object of like, I'm supposed to have that, I don't have that, I'm pissed off, And that's not how life, relationships, anything works.
yeah. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. Like all these guys, like what's funny is in that video he does mention his mother briefly, and he kind of talks about like how he doesn't see her as a role model, and he doesn't mention his
Yep,
dad at all. I
yep,
don't know
yep.
if his dad's on the scene or whatever, but but
Nope.
like I mean, to a certain extent at least, like I understand that you might have more traits in common with your dad. Like, um, that's just kind of in terms of the pushings of male and female brains. Like, uh, men.
And societal expectations.
Yeah, but like not all of it is society. Like,
No,
if
no.
if there was no society whatsoever, and you had 100 kids, and just like 10 of you need to learn how to fix this drain pipe, um, like the the evidence is suggesting that the vast majority of those would be men, like the volunteers would be men.
I don't know,
With
man. That's where you and I see things differently.
well, right, okay, well, you could, of course, you could, like, it depends on how much weight. We know that more men go into it, like over 9 to 1. So really, it only boils down to, is that in your um, in your being, like,
that in
is it
your
in your DNA?
genetics.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or is that a
Really.
societal pressure? So it's just a weighing on how,
Well,
and obviously it's both. I think it's fairly obvious that it is both. It's just
yeah, yeah,
what is the
yeah.
degree of both.
What's the extent? Yeah, and I'm personally, this is kind of a tangent, but in the nurture versus nature debate, I'm
Right.
like very, very heavily on the side of nurture, and
Whereas I'd be very
your
on, yeah, I'd be,
experiences shape you, and your like DNA shapes you.
yeah, and I'd be the total opposite. I'd say that it's way more on the side of nature. I think that, like,
So
uh,
there you go.
yeah, so
Yeah.
like it's and it's impossible to ever do any sort of valid
But the
experiment.
thing is, there's no un untangling the two because
You'd
they
have to
just are.
destroy society. Like
Yeah, like
you
they're so inextricably linked. Like,
yeah. or,
yeah,
or
yeah,
you'd have to, like, do experiments on humans, which we're never going to do, like, like experiments from baby all the way to through to
yeah,
adult.
like the Truman Show kind of situation
Yeah, it's
where
just,
not entertainment but for science. Yeah,
yeah, and, like, that's just so, like, we're never going to
wrong.
touch that, like, um so it is one of those things that, like, as much as you'll disagree with somebody, you just kind of have to accept the other person's,
Yeah, yeah,
um
yeah, yeah. That's opinion. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But
as
yeah, so that's why I'm saying that about about they would choose this versus this.
yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, there's a deeper unsolvable problem there. So you can't answer the more complex question. Like,
Right,
but
right.
okay, so we move on a bit to the other side of labeling then, and how it affects
Yeah.
the things like the
Well,
uh, other identities.
yeah. To me, like, so excuse me. To me, this idea of labeling feeds into this larger idea of larger concept of identity, and it really starts with what do you think identity is, right? And because when you think, okay, that person is a nerd, that person is um, a hippie, that person's wook, that person's black, that person's Latino, that person's this, that person's that. You're really putting them in a group, kind of a commonly accepted group, right? Um, and I think that's our brain's way of organizing people, right? And it feeds into how you see how how it feeds into your identity, because to me, your identity is two things. It's who you think you are plus what other people think you are.
Of course, yeah.
And to me, the labeling is an important part of it, because when you're talking about how other people think you are, to me, there's three things that really feed into that. It's your observable behavior, what they've seen you do, what they've heard about you. So both of those are specific to you. But then their general thoughts about the group that you're in also shape how you're seen,
Right, yeah.
right? So to me, being a part of one of these groups plays a big factor in shaping your identity, right? And in some cases can be the defining feature of your identity uh, for you or for others, right? Like for, let's say, Black Americans, like so much of their experience has just been shaped on how they've been treated because they're Black, right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting about the whole incel thing is that it's a self-generated, uh, it's a group that's found itself, sort of like sneakerheads, right? Uh, Hippies, bikers. These are, well, maybe not so much hippies, but like bikers, right? This is a group that's born of shared shared features, shared worldview, shared whatever.
Right.
Um, and that makes them really interesting because, okay, what draws someone to this group, right? Um, and why I think incels are seen as dangerous, beyond the fact that members of the group have committed violence, because if you want to go meta, every group has committed violence in the name of something or the other, right? That's not what concerns me. The thing that concerns me with incels, as I've said before, is that they're a group founded on grievance. And a group founded on grievance, like you said, will lead to issues down the line, right? And it's really, what's interesting about it is that it's really out of step with the mainstream society today.
Yeah. Um,
You know,
it's interesting, like, you know, the point you were making about um, that person's black, that person's uh, a
this,
woman.
that,
Yeah.
yeah,
What's what's interesting is that we do that inwardly as much as we do it outwardly. So you look at yourself and you go, I'm white, I'm a man, I'm straight, and we want to label ourselves as much as we want to label other people, and organize ourselves into a category as much as we organize other people into categories. And I think perhaps, anyway, like, you know, this is only a thought that I've had since I was last talking, but perhaps, like, where a lot of this dysfunctional labeling comes into place is not finding satisfaction in the more healthy standard labels that are out there. So, like, uh,
yeah,
me as, like, a male, one of the places that I found identity as a teenager was through playing rugby, and I had a clan by playing rugby, right? Um, and you know, another area that I would have uh, found identity was through being straight. And, like, you know, I've got like, you know, I'd have my group of friends, and we'd be like,
chasing
whatever, chasing
girls,
girls,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
um and then, like, any time that you kind of don't have an identity in some sort of fashion.
or you're not able to live up to the standards of your group.
Yeah, then you'll have, like, a little bit of unhappiness associated with that, and that unhappiness can grow, and, like, so on and so forth. But so yeah, I mean, like, that it kind of boils
I Yeah. Sorry, what were you saying?
it's so, like, my head went back to the earlier point about the massives, the hooligan gangs, where, like, you know, there's something deficient in their life that you know, they're bored, or they're out of work, or whatever the hell, um, that this sense of community kind of solves a problem for them. Um,
Yeah.
and, like, I don't know if you've ever seen Green Street. Have you?
Is that a movie?
Yeah, yeah. It's a I think it's a brilliant movie anyway. But so it's a movie about an American want-to-be journalist that moves over to London, I think, for he gets introduced to a hooligan gang, and he just becomes obsessed with it. Um, and, like, he goes from this outward view where he's like, "What the hell are these violent thugs doing?" to, "I can't stop beating the shit out of people. I love my gang," essentially, like, you know. And, like, he was a perfectly normal guy working for some some um, high street kind of newspaper during the day, and then he was just smashing the heads off people at night, you know. Um,
Yep.
so
Yep. I agree with you, and I think if you're just about done with your point,
yeah, I am. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, um, that's why it's so interesting to me that what the incel was talking about reminded me so much of the movie Fight Club. Have you ever
Right.
seen
Yeah, I
Fight
have.
Club?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so the idea in that movie is that there's these guys who are unhappy with their material, boring, blah 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 lives, and so they join together in fight clubs to kind of let out that pent up aggression, beat the shit out of each other, whatever, empower them. And the whole thing is kind of a Trojan horse, because it's like, oh yeah, this is like so empowering, so this, so that. And it makes you realize, like, so like in his speech, Brad Pitt is like, they told you you were going to be a movie star. They told you you were going to be a rock star. They told you you were going to be this, you're going to be that, this, that, blah, 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 blah. And that's not a problem that people had in prehistory, right? The hunters and gatherers, even, any kind of native group today that, you know, doesn't live society as has been lived since agriculture, right? Um, that's not a concern, right? Because the expectations of what your life is does not meet the reality. And I think that that's a lot of the driver for people who are unhappy with it, right? So take incels, right? In all the movies, in all of the culture, in all of this, there's love, there's affection, there's validation, there's intimacy, um, there's interesting thing, there's just things going on, and in their lives there's not these things going on. So it builds up in your mind this expectation, right?
Yeah. Um,
And yeah,
well, so it's interesting. Regardless of Brad Pitt's speech, when you brought up Fight Club, I was like, "Fuck yes!" But actually, yeah, like what I would take from Fight Club is very different. It's that, like, that you've been caught up in your 9 to 5 life, chasing your dream, I suppose, like you were saying, but that it's done nothing for you because you are lonely. And actually, I would say that the main arc um, of the main characters in both Fight Club and Green Street are actually the same. They're realistically the only difference in the overall plot is that Fight Club has this secondary hidden plot that
right, right, right,
um,
which we won't ruin.
yeah, yeah. but but
Yeah,
but both of them I would say are very much about identity, and that, what would compel all these regular Joes to
but that's, yeah,
join a club and then to become radicalized and then commit a domestic terror act for almost no reason.
for almost no reason. Yep, yep. And
Um,
yeah, and that's grievance. That's an unmet expectation, right?
and the grievance
And
isn't even that big to begin with. It's just that the person who you turn to solve your grievance makes it out to be a bigger act
yes,
than even you thought it was to begin with.
right. But that's I think the irony of the movie is that, you know everyone's so pissed off and everyone's so unfulfilled and this and that, but because that's that's because of the that's because of what you think is supposed to happen, right? Like, it's, I don't know, like, it's the life that everyone is pushed into, versus the life that you are supposed to have, is not really the same, and it's that gap that makes people angry. So like in the movie, they revolt against society in general, right?
Yeah,
And in the case of the incels, they revolt against women in particular.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
but it's
I feel
it's
like that's a breakthrough, is it?
maybe it's, yeah, it's very strange. Like, and like, I know people in my life who don't really have good female role models. Um, like, maybe no sisters, or maybe like they were an only child or something, and you know, their mom was shallow or abusive,
Or always at work.
or always at
Sometimes
work,
they
or it
have
could
a
be
loving
could
parent.
literally be anything, right? But it's right, like they didn't get that love and affection and whatever that everyone needs. Um, and I can see how that leads to misogyny in people. Like, that is the thing, right? Like, if like you're conditioned by what's around you, so if all you've seen your whole life is like women are, you know, women won't love you, women won't love you, women won't love you. Like women are just in it for this, women are just in it for that. They care about this, they care about that, they don't care about you, blah, 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 blah. Like you might not even notice that it's happening within you, but it's building those misogynistic feeling that the, it's women's faults,
Yeah.
right? Versus maybe just that one woman's fault,
Yeah.
right? Um,
I,
yeah,
I do
yeah,
think
and that's why it's so important to have uh, role models, good role models in general, whether they be male, female, you know, just people who I don't know. Yeah, yeah, that's just what I'm thinking because that seems to be a big factor in the video that we watched, the Ask Me Anything. Uh, that seems to be a factor in his situation, right? He loves his mom. He loves his mom. He tells you, but he doesn't know if he sees her as a role model.
it kind of comes across that, like, despite the fact that he loves his mom, he doesn't like respect her.
That well, yeah,
That's what
that's
it felt
kind of
like to me.
I think the subtext of that
He
exchange.
doesn't say that, but that's what it came across to me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so if, like, we discussed before about how, like, right wing politics drives left wing politics and so on, like makes them become more polar. Do you think, like, this kind of extreme uh, misogynistic male community is either being driven or driving or both this the more extreme side of the female community?
so you're gonna have to clarify what you mean by that.
So, like, the there's a group in, we'll say, I don't want to call them feminists, because feminism, I think, is a good, uh, like, a good driving force
Right,
in our community.
right. So are
But
you talking about like there's a group of feminists that calls themselves like man-hating feminists? Is that what you're
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about?
man, let's call them man haters. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no, no, no. But there's a group within feminism that
Mm.
they self-identify as man-hating feminists.
Right, yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, I wasn't even aware of this. I haven't really looked
No,
at
yeah.
extremist feminism that much, um, but yeah, I know that they exist, because there's some there's some women that, like, no matter what a man says, it's like, shut up, you've had your time. And that's not how it
But
works. Like, I'm a
there's
30-year-old man. I didn't do anything to you back 100 years ago, you know. So
so it's to me it's different. It's very different.
so you don't think one
Just
drives the other?
not in this case,
Right.
because I think if you look at just general power dynamics, man-hating feminists are, you know, women as people who have to deal with this misogyny and who are living in a man-dominated world,
Hmm.
right? Men have kind of most of the power, most of the whatever. Um, so their grievance is sort of built off of something that's real, even though it's to an extreme point.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's built off of that kind of
Anybody
feeling
who
of
says,
like,
like, shut up, man, like, like, as a man, you don't have an opinion here, I think automatically disqualifies themselves from having an opinion.
right.
Um,
Well, what I'm saying is like, I'm not saying they're right, but the roots of
are
their
different.
grievance are different versus the incels, which their grievance is kind of towards
Mm.
it's not, I guess, maybe social expectation or something like that. It's against oh, yeah, it's a grievance. Yeah, I think it's different in this case. Like
Um,
one pushing the other. Maybe one group will use the other as a scapegoat, right? So like the far like the incels will say all women want to rule us. They want us to be blah blah blah. They want us to be this. They want, and then man-hating feminists will be like, they just want us to be pawns to serve as the like to serve them, to do this, to do that. Maybe that's what you mean, right? Maybe that's what you mean in that
That
they kind of like use each other as scapegoats and
that is
like,
largely what I mean, because I think most of the people are sorry. So how would you become an incel? You're living your life in the normal part of the world is what this is how I view it. Like how it
yeah,
would
yeah,
how an incel is created. Um, is you're living your life in this normal part of the world where, um, to the best of your knowledge, things are generally fair, and then an unfair act happens to you,
you think
right?
it's one thing,
No, like it could be a series of things. It
right?
could
Right,
be
a
like
series of
it could be
unfortunate acts.
yeah. I think it's way more likely to be a series of things than just one
Yeah,
activity. Like you're not going to become an incel just because your girlfriend breaks up with you. Uh,
no, no, no.
but but that's what I mean, is that you're living your life in this kind of zone, and then there's a trigger or a series of triggers, and what will happen is somebody from the community who already exists will kind of almost fish you out of the pool of sanity, and just drag you onto the shore of insanity. Like, does that make sense? And then you just kind of move further and
I
further
don't
away
know.
from.
I feel like you get to a point where you probably seek it out yourself. Like maybe you're not getting the answers you need in regular society, so you look for those answers that the incel community provides. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
but
Like,
even if you do that, so like even if
yeah,
you go and you read an essay or something that has been posted online, somebody has posted that with the intention of
right.
attracting readers and getting them to come over to their cause. Like I think a lot, like it's possible that somebody just posts that to vent. In fact, the very first incel, I don't know, I didn't mention this to you, but I came across it when I was doing my research. The very first incel was actually a woman, like self-identifying incel that used the term and all the rest was actually a woman. And then after that, it kind of got subverted by
Appropriated. Yeah.
appropriated, yeah, by the like yeah this kind of far male
The
community.
men. Yeah.
Um, and that lady apparently now is like happily with somebody. Like, I don't think it was a toxic thing back then. I think it was just how she was describing herself. Um, but yeah,
Yeah. So that's the thing, is that like the word never existed for it for a long time,
yeah,
and then these people existed, and then they heard of this idea and they were like, wait a second, that kind of sounds like me.
yeah,
And so they're and they're similar enough in their where their grievance lies, right, that it kind of builds into a canon almost, right?
yeah,
like this like set of principles that drives you is born from their experiences. They're separate experiences but similar experiences,
and
right?
obviously, like I think it probably started off like an innocent enough thing, like where it was just like, oh,
Right.
like just in one town, all the incels will meet up and play video games, and then it's going to
Yeah.
end in like mass suicide or something. So,
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, well, that's the thing. But it's the the problem is that who considers themselves an incel, it's a similar kind of person, probably, right? Like, even if you are, I mean, also this idea of incel is, you know, logically, I don't know the right word for it, but like it logically it doesn't make sense, because like everyone's involuntary celibate until they're not, like
except for I
you
was,
know, like
I,
yeah,
I was going to
like
say except priests, but they're probably getting more ass than the rest of us. So,
we won't get into that, but you know what I mean, like, but they're voluntary hypothetically.
yeah,
That's what I'm saying. Like this idea of involuntary celibate is kind of like a self-flagellating um, thing of like Mm. It's like you don't want to admit the problem is you, so you pin the problem on society. Granted, like I said, there are things we can do better as a society, but you you push away any responsibility for the circumstances that you find a way yourself in a just blame society, and that's I think where the problem is, right?
Yeah.
Like you do have agency in changing your situation.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Like, that guy could do so much easily. Get a haircut, man. Just get a
Get a
haircut
get
and
a
wash
haircut.
your
I
hair.
mean, for
Wash
any
yourself.
for any single person, a good haircut, good clothes, and like good attitude, I guess, um, will take you far, right? In
Yeah.
terms of making yourself
Even good
more
clothes are
attractive.
optional. Like, just work on your personality and your personal hygiene and
I'm
stuff like that.
saying
You
if
know,
that's such a concern, like, but
it,
also
it, it helps
that's
for sure.
but
Like,
but that's not the framework that they're in.
no.
You know, that's not the framework that they're in a different. That's why I said the thing before about like kind of being in a fantasy, right? Like you those things would help you if what you're really looking for is intimacy, um, but that's not even seen as like the reason for you not having intimacy. Like people should love you for who you are. Like this is also another thing that I got from his the Ask Me Anything with the incel is that like he said, yeah, I think everyone deserves someone who loves them and someone who this and who that. But this idea to me is a bit ridiculous, and I'll tell you why. Because you don't deserve someone to love you unconditional. No one deserves someone
Well,
to love them unconditionally, like without expecting anything of them,
but he
right?
doesn't say
Like,
that. So he actually says that like there are like certain limitations on that, and I think like so most of the time when you're talking about stuff like this, I think where a lot of disagreement comes from is how somebody interprets a word like deserves. So if I remember right, he says something about not being owed, but deserving, right? So if would you say you deserve to be happy?
I
No,
mean,
no.
I'd hope to be
So
happy, but
so I
you know what
like
I mean?
I,
Like
I would say that like deserving to be happy is something that everybody
everyone,
is entitled to say about themselves.
right?
But what you're not entitled is to expect it from one person or like
Right,
so
right,
so
right.
the terminology and like how you use the word deserve is often like half the problem. Like it's
Yeah, but also that what you just said is very true. Like it's a group of people who think that their problems will be solved if they just find that one person
yeah.
who uh, who
That's
will
the biggest part of the problem,
who
really,
will
isn't
who
it?
will end their misery, who will end their loneliness, right?
Yeah.
And that in itself is an unfair expectation of someone else. If you're lonely, if you're feeling these things, um, it's not on one person; it's on you to understand why you're feeling that way and do something about it. And that's, I think, why this idea of just female friendship, of seeking professional help, like psychological help. Like if you are feeling negative feelings, like talking to somebody about it, anybody, a friend, anything, will help you work through those issues. But not if those people are all pushing that same twisted worldview. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm just looking at the date stamp on that video. It's the 3rd of November last year. So if we assume that it was recorded within uh, a week of it being published, I would I would feel quietly comfortable that if we revisited that guy in 5 years' time, he will not be an incel.
I would say 2, 3 years
Yeah, because he does seem to
at the
have some
most.
of the things that like he says it in the video, he has hope. um and I think that's the most important thing. the probably the next most important thing, which he doesn't seem to have, is is a bit of vision. Like, you know, okay, he's looking for a job and he's lost it,
Right.
but
But how are, yeah, yeah.
but he doesn't seem to have grasped the concept that so much of this is actually in his court, and like that he really needs to.
Right. And that's where these groups based on grievance, a lot of the thing is they deny their own agency. You know, they say like, oh, this is just fucked up. Like everyone's doing this to me, and you did not play a part in any of your problems. You know,
Yeah,
um, yeah, taking responsibility is a big thing. Yeah,
I'd love to have a conversation with that guy,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I feel like what wasn't done in that video was what we're talking about now. It's like, dude, buck up. Like, it doesn't matter about, like, your looks are nowhere near as important as they were, you know, when you were 14, 15, 16. um, People are actually looking at your personality a lot more now, and right now your personality sucks ass and you need to fucking really
Well,
have
saying
work
things
look.
like, I wouldn't vote for a woman for president and I think women should serve men is not going to go over well with women. You know,
True.
like those are, you know, like yeah, it's such a, so, yeah, it's, but
it,
that's the thing
it kind of
is,
lends into the argument that women are like an inferior, um, be like, you know, inferior creatures. They're not as smart, blah blah blah. Like, you know, any woman that that you say that to is automatically going to pull away from you. You're going to be back to square one, and you'll be in a position um, where, oh, women won't talk to me. I'm an incel. Back into my
yeah,
group.
it's a self-perpetuating cycle.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. What I mean, if you have regressive views towards women anyway, your pool of women that are available to you are going to be very small.
yeah.
Um, like you know, like those, like remember, promiscuity is the problem. That's why I can't find somebody. Um, if people were more,
Kind of
uh,
sounds like a contradiction as well.
it's I mean it's a logical, like,
It is.
it's what it makes absolutely no sense. If you want someone to find, surely you'd want women to be more promiscuous so that like
Yeah.
even people who are having trouble would be able to find somebody. um, but yeah, but that's how those communities build up. Like they justify uh, they justify their condition as they say, oh, it's society. If it's the women's fault for not liking me, right?
Yeah.
It's not my fault for not being appealing to women or not trying or not, you know, communicating or not doing this, not putting myself in situation, not this, not that. It's not my fault. It's their fault.
Yeah. I think like one thing that we haven't really touched on at all that um, it is admittedly easier said than done, but something that everybody kind of needs to be working on is that you're kind of, if you get in, if you put your happiness on your relationship, you're not going to be happy when you find it.
Nope.
Like,
Nope.
no matter how good that person is or anything like that, you're going to be a miserable bastard. Um, so because there's kind of two ways that that goes. Either the person doesn't satisfy your expectations, which they're like, you know, they're never going to, um, or you're so convinced that they will that you become overbearing and destroy
Yep.
your relationship from within, like, you know. Um, yeah, I think like apart from all the other things that he needs to do, like developing a bit of fucking respect for women and what they contribute to uh,
Right.
society, uh, he also needs to kind of go, well, what do I like about my life? Like, what does make me happy? Um, and just kind of work on those little things. This
But
sounded,
that's, yeah, and but that's the thing is like you're saying the problem, like the big problem in my life is that I can't find somebody, and that's why I'm not like why I'm not happy is because I can't find somebody, and I can't find somebody because of the way society is, and women are too promiscuous, and all of this stuff. So like instead of working on yourself, you just fall into this cycle of blame, 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 never work on yourself, angry, blame, never work on yourself, still angry, blame more, never work on yourself, furious, like swear off women forever, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's this self perpetuating cycle where
Mm.
you never address the actual problems that you have possibly with yourself, and you just blame somebody else,
Yeah.
right?
I was talking about this last week in with a couple of friends, like girls and guys, and we were talking about the general toxicities in particular in dating life, but just in terms of between the genders, things that like hurt, like, you know. So in particular, it was about ghosting, and like I've been ghosted and I've ghosted
Yep.
uh, other people, and I think it's the worst practice that uh, that we do, like the worst regularly occurring practice that you could do.
And kind of socially accepted, even though it shouldn't be.
Yeah, yeah. I like, and the reason why we were talking about it was because um, I had a date and she wasn't interested at the end of it. But
Yeah.
and afterward, so at the end of it, she didn't do a fake phone call, first of all. So she stayed there for pretty much the time that we were going to stay there anyway, and we just had a chat. Um, and she just told me to, like, that she just wasn't interested, and and despite the fact that that's actually a rejection, I felt great. You know, you know,
But
I
I
didn't,
mean,
I
that's the
didn't
thing.
feel rejected or anything. Like, you know, I felt fine. And
Well,
whereas,
even if you do, that tethers you to the world of reality. You don't have this expectation of like, oh, she should be answering me. Oh, she should be going out with me. Oh, she should be this. She should be that. Like, cool. You see where things stand, and you can move forward. You know.
but the really baffling part of all of this was that I felt better being rejected to my, like, to my face by her
Yep.
than
Yep.
I do when I've ghosted somebody. You know. So, like,
Yeah.
when
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
done the asshole act, I actually feel worse than when somebody treats
Well,
me
yeah,
with
because you
respect,
feel
but it
guilty.
isn't. Yeah, yeah, um,
Yeah, of course. Well, that makes sense.
yeah.
And
But we continue to do. So what it stemmed from was a video that I saw of where people who have been ghosted don't feel as negative about the experience as the person who, even though they find it a very unpleasant experience,
right, right.
um, don't feel as bad as when they have ghosted somebody. The majority of people feel better having been ghosted because at least they
Yep.
know they're not the dickhead.
That doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
But we keep doing it. I think it's like, I think 60 something percent of people are ghosting on the regular. It's a
On the
crazy,
regular.
people who are like actively dating.
Like looking for someone. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah,
so
that wouldn't
very
surprise
high
me.
number.
Right, right. Yeah. No, agreed. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But yeah, that's yeah, yeah. I mean, to me, like personally, I have also ghosted and been ghosted, and I think it just stems from difficulty having
Explaining.
confrontation,
See,
not being
like,
able to confront people. Like
I'm
I don't
very
know,
confrontative though.
you are very confrontational, but not. It's not like confront a like someone who's being illogical or someone who's being this. It's like letting somebody down.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's a deeply personal thing, right? Because you're saying you are not appealing to me, but yeah, like you said, it's so necessary, and that's the respectful, mature thing to do. I
and
think,
and people universally appreciate it more.
yeah, yeah, universally, yeah, yeah. It's
And
always easier.
with few exceptions, like I think by and large, if you do kind of reject somebody, even somebody that you've been dating for a while, you're usually met with a somewhat mature response. Um, I think like, you know,
depending, yeah,
yeah, well, yeah, I don't know.
depending on the person, but yeah, like, yeah,
I mean,
better than
in
better
Hanoi, we
than
had some interesting experiences, like, but
of course, but better than just trying to cut and run, right? Like, regardless, having a conversation with the person is the best option.
yeah, even if they do kind of have some sort of asshole response, like, you know, it's still the better option. Just bite the bullet.
You did what you were supposed to do. Yeah,
Exactly.
but that's the thing.
Be the bigger person. Yeah.
But also, that's what society teaches us is that, like, give people like, if you respect someone, be honest with them,
Yeah.
right? I mean, be honest in general, but like, you know what I mean, like, especially for that person who,
Yeah.
you know.
Um,
Oh, we really got
all
off topic
we did a little bit,
there.
yeah. But well, yeah. I mean, some of it ties in, like, you know. But
Oh, yeah. This is going to be our relationship hour.
yeah. John and Elan, relationship coaches.
Hit us with your questions.
All right. On that note, what what do you think are the takeaway points of what we talked about today? Like,
I think we've talked about how people.
well, I'll make one of these points
Yeah.
anyway. I
What do
think
you got?
I think so I the point that has bothered me since the start of all of this is still very much alive, and I think it's so easy, especially when you're talking about an online culture where the people are faceless and stuff like that. Is that it's very easy to be black and white about this kind of thing. And like, I
Yeah.
think if you watch that video that I'll make sure is in the link, you will not, you'll at least not be able to be black and white. You might still think that all all incels are assholes, but,
Yeah.
I think it does highlight that it's very much a person
Yeah.
um, behind this. I personally feel that an awful lot of them are probably rescuable personality types, like, you know, that
Yeah.
they're they're not necessarily all dangerous. I don't really want to get into the numbers of how many are, because I could be way off base on that.
Who knows? Who
um
knows? Yeah.
yeah, but certainly, like, I think anybody, even the most extreme person, will agree that some of them are very fucking bad and some of them are more pitiful than dangerous, right?
Yeah.
So after that, it's only a question of numbers. And the reason why I hate the word incel is because it makes it easier to turn it into a black and white conversation.
Right. But that's with any group, like.
Of course, absolutely, absolutely, and like, yeah,
Yep. Yep. So, like, one person does something, it's the whole group's fault, right?
yeah.
The
Like a really good one is Islam. Like, you know, it's the there's so many Muslims, and there's so few of them that are
Yeah.
extremists, and,
Yeah.
you know, but
And to me, the only difference for me between Islam and uh, being an incel is that uh, nothing about being Islamic lends itself to violence, whereas being an incel, the the conditions that led someone to be an incel may make them a little bit more, may make them more receptive or more open, or at least closer to the idea of accepting violence than
well,
someone in a
your
religion, right?
yeah, your baseline in religion, even though, like, I disagree with religion by and large, um, your baseline is normally of a place of love, right? Whereas your baseline for an incel seems to be more of a baseline of hate,
Anger.
of
Yeah.
anger.
Yeah.
Anger is
At
probably
least
a better word.
at least anger, or at least bitterness or at least
Yes.
fear, something one of those, right? Like it's a yeah. And the thing that probably sticks with me about what we've talked about is those emotion, fear, bitterness. Uh, they come from a place of not having gotten what you need as a person, right? And with any person, like no one is completely fulfilled, right? But some people really in their lives don't get what they need. And whether that's because we don't think we've gotten what society has given us, whether that's because we haven't gotten enough love or affection, whether that's because we haven't gotten enough intimacy, because we haven't gotten enough connection in our lives, um, it's worth talking to people and understanding why they feel that way and what in their life has led them to become that way so that we can understand, okay, potential future incel, how can we keep people from being potential future incels or uh, being someone who's driven by grievance, instead of being someone whose primary motivation in life is being angry at something or being upset with something or bitter with something. How do we fill those gaps so that they can bring their energy to a more productive, happier, fulfilling place? Because to me, unfortunately, it seems like incel is a lot of grievance towards others, especially, but also a lot of self pity and self loathing. And those are things that are not necessary if the gaps are filled, I feel.
Yeah,
So, yeah, listen to people and try to understand them, but also that doesn't mean you have to agree with the ridiculous things that they say.
absolutely. We disagree all the time.
You are a ridiculous bastard.
All right, guys, we're going to leave it there. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Any comments that you have, just pop them down below. We'll try to address them as much as we can. All right, bye.
All right, thanks.